And yet, in one miraculous year, 1905, at the age of 26, he published 5 papers that changed our fundamental understanding of physics forever. Any one of these papers dealing with such topics as time, space, light, energy, speed, relativity, the formula E equals mc squared, any one of these papers would have secured his place in history and his reputation forever. One paper won him the Nobel Prize, and it wasn't his relativity paper. How does a brain overturn firmly entrenched paradigms with impossibly complex levels of abstract thought that have nothing to do with measurable day-to-day experience? The level of genius, one observer said, is practically incomprehensible. Yet I celebrate not so much Einstein's brain as the God who could design a brain that could think at this kind of level. Einstein later wrote about religion, quote, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead, and his eyes are dimmed. It was the experience of mystery, even mixed with fear, that engendered religion, a knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, our perceptions of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty, which only in their more primitive forms are accessible to our minds. It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitute true religiosity. In this sense, I am a deeply religious man. I'm satisfied with the mystery of life's eternity and with a knowledge, a sense of the marvelous structure of existence, as well as the humble attempt to understand even a tiny portion of the reason with a capital R that manifests itself in nature." As we look at the new physics, we could talk about relativity, quantum mechanics, the 4 fundamental forces of physics. I mean, why are there 4? Why aren't there 2? Why aren't there 8? Why aren't there 38? We really don't know, but there's 4. We could talk about superstrings, about fission and fusion, about antimatter. But for this session, we're going to focus on Einstein's relativity. Einstein's relativity taught us that time, space, and light were not what we thought them to be. After relativity emerged, all of physics, even all of reality, was open for redefinition. At the speed of light, if you were to accelerate, for example, a ruler at the speed of light, as it's going faster and faster and approaching the speed of light, when it gets close to the speed of light, the dimension in which it's accelerating starts shrinking, and at the speed of light, the dimension goes to 0. However, the mass goes to infinity, and when it hits the speed of light, time stands still. Another formula that fell out of relativity, E equals mc squared, we already mentioned that, the most famous scientific formula in the entire world. Einstein said that energy and mass are the same things, just different forms of the same things. And if you want to convert energy to mass or mass to energy, he gave us a formula. To convert mass to energy, you multiply it by the speed of light squared. Now, this shirt button has a certain amount of energy and mass associated with it. The mass, obviously, is very little. But if you want to take the pure amount of energy inherent in a shirt button, it would be enough to put the space shuttle into orbit. It would be enough to power New York City for a day. Now think about the total universe, which weighs 10 to the 50th tons. Convert that mass to energy. Do we have any idea what kind of power we're dealing with? Let's look at this special triad now, the triad of relativity: space, time, and light. First, space. We all know that we have 3 spatial dimensions. You can go forward and backwards, you can go up and down, you can go right and left. 3 spatial dimensions. Why don't we have like 5? Why don't we have 2? Why don't we have 8? We have no idea. When the universe showed up, 3 spatial dimensions showed up with it. Now, let's talk a little bit about superstrings. Time and space, by the way, are linked. Einstein says you cannot move in space without moving in time. You cannot move in time without moving in space. So we have 3 spatial dimensions. We have 1 time dimension. We have 4-dimensional people. This is a 4-dimensional universe. As we think about superstrings, if superstrings are indeed real, and we don't know for sure that they are, but the theory of superstrings solves some fundamental problems in physics, and so there is experimental evidence and theoretical evidence that they exactly are true. They would require at least 6 additional spatial dimensions. In other words, when the universe showed up, 3 spatial dimensions manifested themselves, but there's 6 additional dimensions that are hidden, that were tied up in this very, very tiny vibrating energy packet that is 100 million billion times smaller than a proton. And some of the formulas require as much as 25 additional spatial dimensions, and possibly an extra time dimension. So it is possible when God created, actually there was a lot more mystery associated with this than what we think. Now there's an additional wrinkle on this, that some people think that these spatial dimensions are not wrapped up in these little tiny vibrating energy packets, but they are actually branes, B-R-A-N-E-S, and these branes are actually large spatial dimensions, as our spatial dimensions are, the 3 that we know and that we operate in. These other branes are there as well, maybe coexisting with us, but we're not aware of them because we don't exist in those spatial dimensions. But how about Hebrews 12, surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses? Is it possible that there is activity going on in these other spatial dimensions right now that we, in fact, are not aware of? How about space in miracles? When we understand how radically free God is from spatial dimensions, then it is easy to believe in miracles. It's even expected that there might be miracles. For example, Jesus disappearing after visiting with the men on the road to Emmaus is easy. Angels appearing and disappearing, Philip being transported away from the Ethiopian eunuch, Jesus walking on the water, Jesus appearing through locked doors is very easy once you take into account extra dimensionality. All Jesus would have to do would be occupy a 4th or a 5th spatial dimension, and it is very simple for him to perform these miracles. Such thinking might sound kind of like magic or fantasy, or things that 4th grade, 4-year-old children, maybe up 4th grade as well, would think of. But instead, this thinking is consistent with sound mathematics and physics in terms of the new physics.
Michio, extra dimensions is front and center in the scientific world. No longer just science fiction. I want to understand how it works in string theory, in fundamental physics, and then potentially in cosmology in large extra dimensions. How significant is this in our understanding?
Let me tell you a story. When I was a child growing up in San Francisco area, I used to visit the Japanese tea garden and to visit the carp swimming just beneath the lily pads in a 2-dimensional pond. I used to spend hours looking at them. They would swim forward, backward, left and right. Their eyes were to the side, and they couldn't see me. I was in the 3rd dimension. I was in hyperspace. They were totally unaware that there was a universe beyond their pond. And then I thought, well, what happens if I reach down and grab one of the fish, lift the fish up? Maybe that fish was a scientist, and the scientist would say, bah, humbug, science fiction, there's no world of up. Up does not exist. Well, I would grab this scientist, lift them up in the world of up, hyperspace, the 3rd dimension. What would he see? He would see beings breathing without water, a new law of biology. Beings moving without fins, a new law of physics. And then I would put the fish back into the pond. What kind of stories would he tell? Well, today, we physicists believe, we cannot prove it yet, but we are the fish. We spend all our life in 3 dimensions. We go forward, backward, left, right, up, down, thinking that anything beyond our pond, anything beyond our little puny universe is science fiction. We say, bah, humbug. We can't say that anymore because the concept of higher dimensions now is the biggest game in town. You see, in 3 dimensions, there's not enough room to put all the laws of physics. But when you go to this larger pond, this pond of hyperspace, then all the laws of physics just fit together like a jigsaw puzzle.